Hey boys and girls, we're going to do another interactive notebook. So we already did this one that's about using quotation marks, and that was on page 148 and 149. And so we're going to flip over to page 150 and we're going to add something else to the grammar and cup section of our writing notebook. So when you get the paper out of the task folder, you're going to get out, you're going to cut out these little bubbles. Now I didn't cut mine out perfectly, and you don't have to either. So we're just going to cut them out. And now the tricky thing is that when you glue them down, you don't want to glue the whole bubble down because we're actually going to write the dialogue underneath them. So if you'll watch me, you're going to cut out the bubble and then you're just going to put some glue right on the little triangle at the bottom of the speech bubble. And then you're going to stick that on so that when you open it, you can actually see underneath it. So you're just going to stick that little piece on there like that. And I'm going to go ahead and do mine and take up page 150 and 151. So you can go ahead and start cutting, and then if you need to, pause the video. I'm trying to do this real fast while I'm talking, but that's all you have to do is just glue those little pieces down, and then we're going to write underneath them. Okay, so if you need to catch up, pause the video. All right, so we're going to be writing underneath these speech bubbles. Now, of course, in comic books, when you have speech bubbles, you don't have to use quotation marks and stuff. But in regular writing, when we write stories and things like that, we have to use quotation marks to show who's writing. So this is from our read aloud, I Need My Monster. So these are different statements that were made in that book. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take the text that's in the bubble, what the character actually said, and we're going to write it like a sentence if we were writing a story. I just don't think this is going to work. So I wrote, I just don't think this is going to work, I mumbled. Okay, so you're going to write this down, and then after you write it down, I want you to try and figure out where the quotation marks go. And then you can unpause it so we can talk about it. All right, pause now to write it down and figure out where the quotation marks go. Okay, so you've gotten the sentence written down. Now we're going to talk about where the quotation marks go. So we have to put quotation marks around the things the character actually said. Well, the character didn't say, I mumbled. That just explains who said it and how they said it. We've got the comma here to separate what they said from who said it. So we're going to put quotation marks here. I just don't think this is going to work. And then the other quotation marks go here to show that that is the sentence he said. Now remember, the comma goes here to separate what the sentence the character said from who said it, okay? I just don't think this is going to work, I mumbled. So that's how we set off dialogue when we write. So you can pause now to get this in there. If you had it done differently, you need to have it done like this, and then we'll pick back up. Okay, the next one. My regular monster went fishing. Now that was something that the boy character that was telling the story said. So let's look at it. My regular monster went fishing, I shouted. Now remember, when we're reading a comic book, it doesn't have to say I shouted because the speech bubble would be pointing to the character who's saying it. But when we read regular books, we have to tell who's saying it. My regular monster went fishing, I shouted. So you're going to write this down and you're going to put the quotation marks where you think they should go. So pause now and do that. Okay. So I hope you put the quotation marks just around the things that the character said. Obviously, the character wouldn't say, I shouted. And we have an exclamation mark here, but then that's the end of the sentence the character said, but it's not the end of the regular sentence. So we had to have period here too. So we're putting the quotation marks around the things the character spoke. Okay? We don't put a comma here because we have an exclamation point at the end of the sentence he said out loud. But we put a period here to show that that's the end of the complete sentence. It's a little tricky with quotations because there's a complete sentence the character said, but then you also have to tell who said it. Okay, so you can pause to catch up with this if you need to. Okay, the next one. I understand you need a monster with claws. Now that was actually said by one of the monsters in the story. It was said by Ralph. So I put, I understand you need a monster with claws, squeaked Ralph. So you pause the video and see if you can figure out where the quotation marks should go. Okay, well, you need to put the quotation marks around the things the character said. Obviously, the character didn't say squeaked Ralph. He said, I understand you need a monster with claws. And then we separate what he said from who said it with a comma, and then we put the quotation marks to show that he said it. Okay, you can pause to catch up. All right, and then the last one, I don't mean to be rude, but is that nail polish on your claws? That was something that the boy said that was telling the story. So I put, I asked at the end. I don't mean to be rude, but is that nail polish on your claws, I asked. So pause the video, write your sentence, and then add your quotation marks to it. Okay? Well, it looks like the quotation marks are going to go around everything except for I asked, because that tells us who said it. I don't mean to be rude, but is that nail polish on your claws? I asked. Now, we don't put a comma here because he's asking a question, okay? So we have to punctuate the question the character said and then tell who said it and then punctuate the regular sentence. So we only put a comma there if we're separating it from who said it, and we're not putting separate punctuation. If it's an exclamation point or a question mark, then we would have to put that instead. All right, so you can pause the video and catch up, and that's all we're doing on this foldable, so good job.